And also we will be streaming this session live on Facebook. So we'll have the opportunity to share the recording afterwards in your networks, but also you can share the live stream on Facebook. It will be on the Bridge 47 Facebook page in a second. Also, just to let you know already beforehand, the PowerPoint presentations which you're seeing today will be shared with you afterwards as well. As mentioned, this webinar is organized, among others, by Bridge 47. So who is Bridge 47? It's a network co-created and implemented by European and global society organizations. And what the aim of Bridge 47 is to contribute to transformation towards global justice through global citizenship education, which is the 47, the SDG 4.7. And what do we do? There are 4 pillars of our activities in Bridge 47. One is building and coordinating a global network. And we are having today a real global network session today. What we also do is to advocate to change policies. Also, we are building new partnerships, sometimes even very unusual partnerships. And of course, capacity building is one of our main tasks as well. So also this webinar is one of our capacity building activities. What this webinar will do is to present study abroad programs that empower young people from all different kinds of backgrounds with their global skills, with essential global skills, but also with the passion for making a difference. And who are the passionate speakers which we are having here today? These are Elisa Briga. She's the head of advocacy of the European Federation for Intercultural Learning, in short, EFIL. Also Carol, the head of educator and school relations of the AFS Intercultural Programs, as well as Jenny Laurentinusdottir. You will have to correct me with the pronunciation of your name. She's the head of programs also at EFIL. And these 3 wonderful speakers will focus today on their practices of work and how these practices develop active global citizens determined to make the world a better place. And before we are starting with our session, we are very curious to get to know you, who is here with us today. And we would like to start a little poll, a little survey. And we have 2 questions for you. So what is your priority area of work? And what is your key reason to joining this webinar? So I'm starting the poll now, and you will see there are a few options for you to choose. And yes, we really are curious to know who you are, who is here with us today. And I can see that, I hope that you all can see the poll. No, nobody's participating, so I guess it's not working. No poll. Wait a second. Starting again. Sorry for that. Okay, it worked for some, but not everybody. Technicalities are not on my side today, it seems. So I'm starting it again. Okay.
I believe Zoom has been overwhelmed these days.
It seems like this.
Too many new users.
Exactly. So I'm very sorry that this technical hiccup stopped us from getting to know you a little bit better. However, I'm sure we have lots of time to get to know you better during the Q&A session. So before I'm handing over to Elisa, I am asking you to write your comments and your questions, your thoughts to the speakers in the chat box. So if you're at any time would like to address the speakers, please write your question in the chat box and I will be collecting them and forwarding to our speakers. So now I'm very, very happy to give the word and give the floor to Elisa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ricardo. First of all, we start by getting to know what AFS is. And we have a video for this so that it's more attractive for all of you to discover the AFS world. Okay, so you just saw of the video, the music was not working, but you will be able to see the video most probably later when you get the presentation fully. What is AFS? AFS provides intercultural learning opportunities that help people to develop the knowledge, skills, and understanding needed to create a more just and peaceful world. So a very noble mission that we have. You might be familiar already with AFS Intercultural Programs in your own country. It's an international voluntary non-profit organization that has been developing global citizens for the last 100 years. We believe that more than just peaceful world means also diverse and inclusive society. And in order to make this happen, intercultural understanding needs also to be bridged with global citizenship, with being active in your community. And this is, the question is, how do we really develop global citizens then? It's through our programs that empower young people from all backgrounds with these essential global skills, global competence, and the passion to make a difference. And our international exchange programs, education, volunteerism, and advocacy, they all are based around this objective of intercultural understanding. And global competence, which is at the core of the educational objectives of our programs, is framed around the United Nations SDGs and Goal 47. And we develop mostly intercultural competence and global competence through the so-called school-based exchange programs, study abroad programs for 15, 18 years old, but not only. And one maybe important thing for you to know is that in this very difficult times of the COVID-19 crisis, you can imagine how study abroad programs have been impacted. So for the last month, our organization has been repatriating more than 7,000 students that were spending their transformative and life-changing experience worldwide. And we are now supporting them through online learning to reflect upon this intercultural exchange that they had in a very specific moment of history. So this is about what we do in general. And you might want to know a bit also more about what our organization strives in general. Okay, I think it's, and what is EFIL? So what is EFIL is the federation of AFS in Europe. So there is AFS Intercultural Programs worldwide, and in Europe, the AFS organizations have reunited around this European organization that provides support to advance the AFS mission on advocacy, projects and programs, educational tools, and so on and so forth. So, and if you want to know more about what we do specifically in Europe, you can check our website, which is on the slide. And guess you're very curious to know now what our practices on global competence are. So I will pass on the word to Ana Carolina or Carol.
Thank you, Elisa, and greetings everyone from Southern Brazil. As Ricardo mentioned, I work for AFS Intercultural Programs, particularly to our headquarters, our international office. They are located in New York, and I work for them, but from Brazil. So I'm going to share with you one of our practices that, as Elisa mentioned, we not only work with study abroad programs, but we've been going beyond study abroad programs to think, how can we reach more, as she mentioned, through our impact goals? How can we develop more active global citizens and really expand access to intercultural education beyond those that are impacted through our study abroad programs? Of course, in our study abroad programs, it's not only the students that go through the experience that are impacted, but also all the volunteers that support them, the schools that host the students, and of course the host families that receive these students voluntarily as well. But in EFECT Plus, what we did was to kind of combine some of the best practices we have in AFS for over 70 years, since we started our study abroad in the 1940s, on what we've been doing in terms of pedagogical approach. So we do a lot of experiential learning, and we embed this content of active global citizenship and intercultural understanding in our programs through our orientations and trainings for volunteers and staff. And we've had many practices across our network. We work in over 60 countries in different ways of engaging the community and especially other youth in our programs. And with EFECT Plus, we wanted to combine these practices, and particularly this was created the year after the Sustainable Development Goals were launched, because we wanted to do something to raise awareness about the Sustainable Development Goals and equip youth to be active change makers. We had been doing that in Europe, like there was our colleagues at EFIL had a very exciting program in our orientations called Active Citizenship. Some of our national organizations have been doing this, but we never had a joint international approach. And this actually started in 2016. It was piloted in Brazil, in Rio. Throughout 2017, we implemented in other cities in Brazil. And then since 2018, it has been implemented in our AFS Global Network. And I'll share more with you about what it is and how it works. But before I do so, I wanted to show you so you get a sense of what does this workshop looks like and get a feeling of what it is like, to share a video with you And I understand there was a problem with the previous video regarding the audio, so I'll be mindful about that. I am switching my headsets out and putting the audio in the computer, but don't worry, because there is no talk. It's just some images so you get a sense of what an EFAC Plus workshop looks like. And this one that I'm gonna be sharing was a workshop implemented in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia in December last year. So let me set up the video so you can see it. Let me just go back to the presentation now. Can you see my screen? Perfect. Okay, so let's talk a bit more about what you saw and what is EFAC Plus. EFAC Plus are workshops that gather youth to reflect on global issues and how they can determine how they can work together to really tackle and advance. So here we are framing global issues through the lenses of the Sustainable Development Goals. So presenting these goals to them, helping they raise awareness and help them reflect about what is their role as active citizens to really help advance them and solve them in their communities. And who is it for? Mainly it was designed for youth, mainly the key audience that we work with in AFS, teenagers between 14 to 18 years old. But in partnership with other organizations, we have also implemented with younger audiences. For example, with our colleagues at the Children's International Summer Village, CISV, we have collaborated with them and have done versions for a target audience a bit younger, from 18 to 13-year-olds. And we have also collaborated with higher education institutions, universities, and have done some workshops with an older audience, adults between 18, 22 years old. Because of course, the content is relevant for everyone, but mainly young people of many ages. And what changes is, of course, the content doesn't change, but the delivery, the types of activities that we do and the pedagogical approach when we are implementing the workshop. And how it is implemented. So it's been developed by AFS, and we work with our AFS organizations, which, as Elisa mentioned, are mainly voluntary based. We do have national offices and staff like ourselves, but this is mainly volunteer driven, implemented by AFS local chapters, by AFS volunteers that have many equipped facilitators in intercultural learning and experiential learning approaches. And what they do is that they partner with local AFS, with local educational organizations and other youth organizations as well. The key group that we work with is schools, mainly high schools, because of course we have a big alliance with schools through our study abroad programs. They are the ones who host our AFS high school program students. So we do offer this also as something that it is part of our expertise, and we can offer in return to collaborate with teachers and educators in high school to make it available, this type of activity, to all their students. But we also been working with other like-minded organizations, other youth organizations, as CISV, as I mentioned. So there is a lot of opportunity to collaborate and implement this together. The format that we have, the suggested standard one, is a one-day interactive workshop, as you saw in the video from Malaysia. So that's a full day of activities where students really learn about the SDGs and explore their role as global citizens and change makers, as we like to call it. And as you might have seen, there is a part that is like a panel with speakers. Those are what we call interactive talks, where we suggest inviting someone from the local community that is doing work related to one of the Sustainable Development Goals and really helping advance. Preferably young people as well, so that students can relate to and see other young people being active in their communities and doing some kind of work related to the SDGs, but not only. Then a lot of hands-on activities, like really workshop where they get like simulations and other reflections, and really do some action planning around the reflections that they are having throughout the day. And in some cases, we have some suggestions, and some do implement these, of pre and post-event actions. Of course, this is a one-day workshop, so there's limited impact that we can have with this. But if we combine it as well with pre-event activities or post-event activities, and some examples are, one of the activities, and I'll share the agenda with you in a second, is kind of a community mapping, where they map what are the key main issues in their local communities. And as a pre-event activity, we suggest them doing this community mapping to photographs, for example, and bringing them to the day of the event. So they can already start reflecting about what are the most pressing issues that impact their local communities. And an example of a post-event action is actually following up, because as I mentioned, the key goal is to raise awareness about the SDGs, and there is some action planning around a project that they could create to tackle one of the SDGs together or by themselves in their local communities, or continuing to raise awareness with others about what are the SDGs and why are they important. So a post-event action could be, as our colleagues are doing in France, a mentoring afterwards. So in some cases, AFS volunteers follow up via Zoom calls with the group of students that they have met in person to check in how they are doing and kind of do a coaching and exchange ideas about local social projects and local action and so on. And as I mentioned, this is the sample agenda that we have, the suggested one, a standard for one day. So we suggest from 2 to 4 interactive talks to invite 2 to 4 speakers. If it's not doable to invite speakers to come in person, they could record videos, or there are so many resources available online, ready to use with subtitles and available in many languages that we could use to really, because the goal of these interactive talks is really to inspire you to see how this is being done in the real world to tackle the SDGs. So you could use TED Talks or other videos, things that you think will relate and resonate with the local community. Then it's interactive because we have some suggested activities to do. So it's not only a one-way lecture talk, so to make it a little more interactive. And then the second part is really focused on these hands-on activities. So we have some icebreakers, some energizers. One of the activities is about really understanding what is change making and what does it mean to be an active citizen. The other one is kind of a privilege walk, where they really reflect about their place and where they are at in the world. The other one, as I mentioned, is about a community mapping, where they really reflect about the place where they live, either the neighborhood, the village, the city, depending on the type of group you're working with. And finally, they do this kind of action planning on something really small, all actions matter, that they could do in their day-to-day after the workshop to tackle the SDGs. We have developed a manual for facilitators, AFS volunteers and staff that are on the ground implementing this, with the sample agenda and also a step-by-step design of these activities, and also some recommendations and supporting materials. Of course, we do encourage this. It's really hard, as you know, to work globally and create something that will be standardized. There is no one size fits all. So we really encourage our very well-equipped and trained facilitators to adapt this to their local realities. For example, in Dominican Republic, what they've been doing that they realize is that they do work more closely with teachers and use teachers as resources as well. So we use them as co-facilitators and train together with them. They also break it down in shorter sessions, so they go many times to the same school to deliver this, because it's really hard for them to get a full day to do this in the school. In other countries, they break it down into two sessions. They go one day and do half of it, they go the other day and do half. So there are many potential ways of doing. And our colleagues in Italy, they've been doing their own version of this program even before we launched this. They call it the Global Village. And they do it once a year. All the chapters that are interested in implementing this in their local communities, they do it on the same day, which is the Intercultural Dialogue Day, the third Friday or Thursday, Elisa, correct me if I'm wrong, of September. So it's really exciting to see the many different ways of implementing this. And here for you to have an idea of what has been the impact so far. As I mentioned, 2016, we piloted in Brazil. 2017, it was only implemented in other cities in Brazil. And then since 2018, since February 2018 until, these numbers are until January this year. So in a course of 2 years, we have reached over 5,000 young people through these workshops. Over 100 workshops have been delivered. Over 150 schools and other institutions and organizations were impacted. And we have been implementing this across 19 countries, as you see there, in many different parts of the world. And I see there are some questions popping up, and I'll get to them in a second, because maybe some of them will be covered shortly. And one of them that I want to share with you is actually a success story. So a testimonial from Juliana Carmo. She was a participant in the first pilot that we did in Brazil in 2016. She was 15 years old at the time. And in 2017, she was featured on this publication called Youth 2030, which is about paths and learnings on sustainable development world. And it's about testimonials of youth that are working towards a more sustainable world. So I'm going to read the excerpt so you can get an idea. I am Juliana Carmo, or Ju Carmo. I am 17 years old, and I live in the neighborhood of Honorário Gurgel in the northern zone of Rio de Janeiro. I am Black and wonderful. I like to talk a lot. I like to know about everything and learn even more. I love photography, trips, animals, and music. I am persistent and currently searching for problem-solving ideas for my school and the community where I live. And this is just an excerpt of what she said, and I find particularly interesting the last part, this idea of problem-solving ideas for my school and the community where I live in. She was still in school at the time. Right now she's in university studying communications. And she was also part of this young journalist program from the Center for International Educational and Sustainable Development in Rio, and the Rio Plus Center of the United Nations Development Program. And it's quite interesting to see, of course, this is not only the effect of her taking part in EFAC Plus, but of pursuing this, but it's interesting to follow the stories as well and see how many, and this is just one of many stories of participants that we had that have been following a path related to the SDGs. And one just interesting fact as well is that this organization that runs this young journalist program that coincidentally Juliana was part of as well, called CIEDS. The president and founder of this organization is an AFS alumni, Vandré Parente. Vandré Brilhante, sorry. He went on an exchange program in the 1980s from Brazil to the US. And during the 90s and the early 2000s, he was a long-term AFS volunteer. He was also a member of our International Board of Trustees. And until this day, he has been, he is an AFS friend and collaborator. So it's interesting to see as well that himself, who was a participant in one of our study abroad programs, is doing a work linked to the SDGs and empowering and equipping other young people as well. Finally, just so you can get an idea of how you can get involved. So the first step would be to partner with your local AFS organizations. And you can look it up on our website, shared over there, to see if there is an AFS organization in your country who is doing or will be starting implementing EFIL Plus soon. Also in countries where AFS is not present, perhaps partner with us as well to see how we could implement this together. And of course, in both cases, we're always looking for like-minded organizations, teachers, and other educators to collaborate with us to keep expanding how we tackle SDG 4, Target 4.7, but also others that work with other SDGs. And in face of the current scenario, of course, we are not currently doing these programs in person since the last month and a half. I believe the last workshop was early March in Costa Rica, before schools closed and before we were all globally impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. And right now, as Elisa mentioned, we're very focused on supporting our students who have been repatriated, that had their programs, study abroad programs, terminated due to COVID-19. But of course, we are already thinking how we can keep this initiative moving forward, and very mindful about the relevance of making this a virtual offering and how timely this is. So we are currently thinking about this, and if you want to partner with us to do this, if you want to fund us to do this, or will come with us to find funders to make this virtual and accessible to even more young people, just let us know. And Ricarda, we have some time for questions now.
Indeed, yes. Thanks so much, Carol, for this very insightful input and amazing projects and programs you're running. It's a pleasure to listen to you, also to hear your passion about that, about your work. I want to really do only a very quick and very short Q&A now, so that we can go into depth and into further discussions later. I picked out a few questions, and I will come back to all the other questions which you have included in the chat box already. Eve Reitling, she was looking for a link to the handbook you mentioned, Carol, and I think we might be able to include, or you might be able to include this link in the PowerPoint presentation. Or maybe it's even possible to link it now later in the chat box. Hope that's okay.
Well, the handbook is developed for our AFS volunteers and staff. I'd be happy to share an overview, but unfortunately, currently it's only available for our network. But if you partner with AFS or reach out to us, we can definitely talk about it. We, of course, want to make this accessible for all, but because we need trained people delivering to keep the excellency of the program and so on, we encourage talking to us before just downloading, so we can walk you through what is the pedagogical approach. I mean, there is a reason why we're sequencing the activities the way we did, and the approach that we use when we deliver the activities.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for clarifying this. And there have been quite some questions about the locations of the programs. So there was a question if there is AFS in the Philippines, in Greece, in Francophone countries. And yeah, some of these have been already answered in the chat box, but maybe Carol, you can also mention again where you can find your AFS contact points.
Yes, if you go to afs.org, you can see all the countries that we are currently at. I believe right now we have offices in 59 countries, but these operate in some other countries as well. So we're reaching about 90 countries. I don't know all by heart right now, but many are covered, but of course not all. So you can check. And the program, this one is currently implemented in 19 countries, but we're happy to look into and collaborate with others to implement in other countries as well.
Thank you. Then there was another question on measuring, and Kola asked, have you been able to measure the impact of your training, especially if there's any long-term effects?
So of this specific program, we haven't been measuring and assessing impact. We do sometimes do together with it self-assessment, self-reported, mainly about students' global competence or intercultural competence assessment. We use some frameworks that are validated in the field, but long-term, as of right now, no. We do have a lot of studies done in collaboration with many researchers for our study abroad programs, and I'm happy to share a link together with the follow-up afterwards.
Mm-hmm. And before I go into all the other questions, I'm going to be handing over to Jenny. Jenny, let us know about the program you are working in, the Peace Program. Thank you.
Yes. So yes, I'm going to be talking about the Peace Program. This program actually has two tracks: European track focused on European citizenship, and the global track. And I'm going to be talking about the global track here, which is centered on the themes of global citizenship education. Now, it is one of the initiatives that, or one of the actions that we take in order to empower young people to become active global citizens. And we all but it's an exchange program for high school students between 15 and 18 years old, hosted in local host families and attending local schools. And on top of this intercultural dimension, we have this special focus on global citizenship education. So if we can move forward to the next slide, how we address this global citizenship element or topic through the program is through three different projects or two different projects and one closing camp. And the first project that the participants engage in is the Global Citizenship in You. And the student, before going on an exchange, the student selects a topic or a global topic. And then this person goes on and does a research in his or her or their home country. And then during the exchange, this person does the same and presents their findings and results at the final camp. And to make an example, if I am an exchange student going from, for example, Iceland to Italy, and I'm very passionate about the topic of gender equality, I start by asking, before I depart for my exchange, I start by asking my family, my teachers, my friends about the topic of gender equality, as well as I research on the internet and check out the newspaper and so on and so forth. And then I go on and do the same thing in my host country. And this is all to start or give the participants the opportunity to start developing their global awareness. And so if we continue, the students can sorry, if we can go to the next slide. So we have different topics that have been identified within the Peace Program that we offer to the students, but they're also free to go beyond this list. but they are also based on the Sustainable Development Goals. And so yes, so that is the GCNU project. And then we have the second project, which is called the Active Project. And this is where the students during their program do 10 hours of community service or any type of volunteering. And we fully recognize that because our students are obviously hosted in very different countries and different, sometimes small towns. There are different also local realities. So there's not always the same opportunities for volunteering, but it's any kind of community engagement which allows the participants to engage with their community, but also connect with the local community through sharing concerns of global issues, but exploring it also from a local reality. And yes, so if we can continue to the final camp, which is one of the also perhaps one of the most powerful elements of the program when it comes to empowering these young people to become active in their society. And this is a 4-day closing event at the end of the 3-month exchange program. And both, so we have programs hosted in Asia and we have programs hosted in Europe. So for the participants hosted in Europe, they end up in their final camp in Brussels. And for the students hosted in Asia, they end up with a final camp in Kuala Lumpur. And during this closing camp or closing event, they attend different workshops run by volunteers, by AFS volunteers, that are addressing or discussing the SDG goals or different global topics, as well as the students are given the tools to create a positive change in their society once they return, and we kind of support them to create some sort of action plans or plans in order to implement their ideas and their projects once they return. And we also prepare them for re-entering their country after this intense intercultural experience. So just to clarify a little bit the photo, you see a lot of people, but these are also both the Europe track and the global track. And the Europe track so far is bigger as we just started this, the global track of the peace program in 2018. So it's still growing, but this is the group of young active citizens that we had in our final camp in Brussels in December. So if we can continue with our slides. So the peace successes is that we have a very high satisfaction rate of the final closing camp and the program overall. And it has shown that we are developing these students' understanding of what it means to be an active citizen and of active citizenship in general. And we give them these tools to actually to actually go ahead and create positive changes or take actions in order to create positive changes in their society. So if we continue, I just wanted to show you, so of course after every program we ask for feedback from the students, and we give them statements and ask them how much they agree from 0 to 10 on certain statements, and asking them or the statement, I am overall satisfied with the peace, so the peace program. They give an average 9 out of 10, and then also the results show us that they do have a better understanding of what it means to be an active citizen, and they do feel like they have these tools to create a positive change. So continuing from there. So I think we are very proud of the content that we provide through the peace program, but it's still growing. So we of course want more participants. Currently we have we have reached 86 participants, but we hope to be able to reach to more participants to contribute to the development or the journey of these young people to become active citizens. And there have been 5 editions of the Peace Program done. And there you can see again the black dots where the AFS organizations are located, and the AFS organizations that are actually participating in the Peace Program. And hopefully this will of course grow, because the Peace Program is open for all the AFS organizations, of course. And it's not only, even though it's hosted in Europe and hosted in Asia, the program is also available for South America, North America, Africa, and the rest of the north of the Asian countries as well. Now, continuing. So how to enroll in the program, just like Carol said, that reach out to your local organization. You can participate through being a student, being a participant, or you can also volunteer, as long as you become a part of the AFS organization in your local community. And you can become a host family. And these are the dates. Also, you can see the dates of the program if you are interested or have somebody that could be interested. The program is in January to April in Europe, and then again over European summertime from July to end of September in Asia, and then again from August to December in Europe. So yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Wonderful to learn more about the Peace Program, and what a wonderful name for this program as well. And yes, we are opening now the final Q&A session. And while I'm giving you the time to type in the questions to Jenny, and of course also to Carol and Elisa, I'm coming back to other questions which were posted before. And one of them has been already answered by Carol, but I might read it out again if this is okay for you. Katja Driessen asked if there is an educator training for AFR done by AFS in order to bring together international educators, as she imagines improving global citizenship education competences of educators themselves would have a broader multiplier effect to reach even more young people. And yes, Carol, you already mentioned there is this intercultural learning. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, Ricardo. I'll actually let Elisa add to that, since there is a program that has been developed and led by EFIL with AFS organizations in Europe, and then we rolled out globally.
Perfect, Elisa.
Yeah, we had this project, Intercultural Learning for Pupils and Teachers, that you can find at www.intercultural-learning.eu, where we have developed a training program for teachers or for educators in general to develop their own intercultural competence, because we start from the assumption and belief that only if you have developed intercultural competence, you are then able to empower others, because it's experiential learning. It's not about reading books. It's about behaviors and testing behaviors, and it's not that once you learned about intercultural competency, then you learn for life, but it's rather a lifelong learning subject. So there on the website you can find the training sessions. It's a training for educators. So the sessions are meant to be for trainers to then deliver to teachers. So it's not that a teacher reads it and by reading the session they learn. It's more a training session outline, as we call them, for trainers, for teacher educators. And as Carol was saying before, for Effect Plus, we also believe that these are materials that need to be used together with experts on intercultural learning. So they're not necessarily ready to be used, but we encourage anyone interested, school and organization, to get in contact with us so that we can then design a training based on that project for them specifically. And also for this, on this project, you also find a so-called toolbox for intercultural learning activities that can be done in the classroom, which goes a bit together with the training. So the idea is that we equip teachers with intercultural competence, but also with tools on how to develop this competence in the student. And yes, this project started in Europe, but then AFS in Intercultural Programs upscale it to the international level. So also AFS organizations throughout the world are able to conduct teacher training. So there were several questions asking whether we offer teacher trainings around the world. We have started. I mean, it's not that all AFS organizations do it, but if you ask, there is a demand, and then this can be organized. So because I mean the expertise and the tools are there. We organize annually in Europe international teacher training. However, this year was cancelled due to COVID. But next year.
Yeah, and just to add, sorry, Ricardo, just to add to that, for the current scenario, we are been developing and launching this virtual center for intercultural learning and global competence education. That is an online hub. And our first initiative actually happened last week and this week, which is a series of webinars for educators. The first were for those working in mobility programs, international education for students, but we'll have many others, and I'll be happy to share a link with you so you can stay up to date to these virtual events happening for those who want to join, similar to what Bridge 47 does. We are also sharing webinars, our expertise through webinars with others as well, and inviting other experts as well.
Thank you both. To both. As it has been mentioned already, there's also a question regarding COVID and Corona situation. Ruiz Cacoredio asks, there is no clear vision on when the situation with Corona will be over. Means that if we want to implement activities you're describing, it has to be online. So it's a question to all of you. Do you think this will have the same effect and impact like in-person workshops? Maybe Elisa, do you want to respond to that?
I was already unmuting myself.
Oh, sorry, Carol, please.
But Elisa, you want to go first?
Carol, I think you are more on
okay.
this.
Well, it's never the same as in person. We are, of course, doing mobility in-person programs, and we believe in experiential learning, what you learn firsthand. It's never going to replace, right? And the human connection of being face-to-face with others, different, and really experimenting these activities. But of course, there is so much we can do online and reach similar educational goals and learning objectives as well. And we have been doing, we call it blended learning in AFS. Mostly we have done tools and educational projects for our adult learners, not for high school students. But right now, because we were faced with the situation, we had, once our students were evacuated, 2 weeks to adapt our educational programs for this audience. So we are right now piloting and testing that. There have been some smaller activities. And as I mentioned, we are very interested in turning this Effect Plus program into an online virtual offering. And of course, if we can create something with the multiplier effect, that the sense we create resources and train teachers, and then teachers use these resources with their students, the better.
Thank you, Carol, for tackling this very difficult question. There was a question to Jenny. Is the enrollment to the PEACE program free for students?
The PEACE program is not free for students, but depending on where you live, you can always reach out to your organization to see. Some of the organizations tend to offer some sort of scholarships, but no, it's not for free.
Thank you. There was again a question on the countries where your programs are happening. And maybe you can clarify that there are also African countries involved in your programs.
To send African countries, as in where there is AFS organizations, are more than welcome to send on the program. It's just that to begin with, it was a collaboration between AFS organizations in Europe and Asia, but we of course want to reach to organizations beyond this area. So if you are planning to go, or you know somebody that is interested in going, then you can always reach out to your organization in Africa to see.
Yeah, and I must add to that, Jenny, we're currently underrepresented in Africa, currently only in South Africa, Ghana, Kenya, and in Northern Africa, in Tunisia and in Egypt. So there is also the opportunity of engaging in AFS in other ways throughout Africa, but our few organizations in the African continent, they do have their own association as well, called AFS in Africa, which they also try to do events and gather teachers and educators and learners from across the African continent as well.
An additional question was on age. Are there any age limitations? I think this has been mentioned already, but maybe you want to repeat it, both of you.
For the peace program?
Yes, and I guess for the
most AFS.
Yeah.
Yes, so it is between 15 to 18 years old. So it's for high school students. However, maybe Carol, because you are with AFS International, there are also other things that we offer. You are muted, Carol.
Oh, sorry. Yes, programs for all ages, both mobility programs, as we mentioned, other learning opportunities and initiatives such as workshops, training, professional development. But, well, the age group we start with is 14 years old, but we go way older than that at any age. There are like language programs, short-term programs, professional volunteer abroad programs, programs specifically for teachers and educators as well, like short-term teacher exchanges, class exchanges as well for teachers that want to take their classroom in bilateral exchanges. Of course, right now we are all on hold due to COVID virus, but we know this is temporarily and soon programs will be resumed as well. Meantime, a lot of opportunities to connect online.
Thank you to both of you. And I see we're coming to an end. There are not many further questions coming in. I have one final one before we're closing. It's related to effects. So actually two persons were talking about the so-called butterfly and generating effects. That's a question from Kerry Reid. And Jureen Cedro, she was interested in the so-called effect plus for the future generation of her country. Maybe Elisa and Carol want to respond to the question on effects of your programs?
Yeah, so I can touch in general on the effects of our programs. So what we see, of course, is on the long term. So it's there has been longitudinal studies to see the effect of our exchange programs. Probably there will be also something on activities such as Effect Plus, that are workshops in schools that are more recent. So in order to do a longitudinal study, we still have to wait for a while. What we see right away is the motivation of the students, their engagements in, let's say, becoming change makers in their little community, like wanting to do something, and also having this idea that they can do it. So it's motivational, it triggers their passion, triggers cooperation with others, creativity. It has an impact in their school, in their classmates. One of the biggest, let's say, objectives also of AFS is globalizing schools and institutions. So the idea is that we don't only change the life of the student participating, but the community around, and especially the school. So that also the whole classroom and school benefits from either hosting a student or sending a student on an exchange. And there are several activities while the student is on exchange and also after that aim at engaging his or her peers. But I'll pass on the word to Carol to add on that.
Yes, no, I feel we have, as Elisa mentioned, many studies. One thing to have in mind is that, of course, the key SDG that we work with is 4.7, and we are also very concerned about tracking the development and progression of this SDG and how the work we are doing is helping to advance this. So we have collaborated with others, and there are many frameworks that talk about different things, like in Europe, oh, I forgot the name of the framework, Elisa, Competences for Democratic Culture. Exactly. Yes, so that was the framework we were based for the project that Elisa mentioned, that I mentioned, ICL for Pupils and Teachers. There has also, we have also been collaborating with the OECD on the PISA Global Competence Framework, and actually this year, the launch of the results of PISA will be in partnership with AFS in our global conference that is going to take place in October. If not in person, it's going to be a virtual event, so that's still going to happen. And also we have collaborated with many researchers from the field to talk about global competence and intercultural competence development. And the main things that we see in our programs is the development of some of the skills and core competencies that Elisa mentioned. For example, self-awareness, empathy, awareness about others, communication skills, critical thinking, creative thinking, global awareness. So there is a series of indicators that we are measuring and using validated tools, either self-assessments or questionnaires, psychometric tests, to see how they've been impacted. As I mentioned, there have been anything specific other than some Effect Plus that we did, some surveys on self-assessment for students, but for Effect Plus we haven't had yet, but for other programs, as our study abroad programs, we've had. And we also have a tool that we help schools measure where they are at in terms of their readiness to provide global competence education for their students, and that's free to use. It's an online tool, and it gives the profile of your school. So any teacher, school principal, school administrator can fill it in, and it's at afs.org/index. I'll share on the website as well. I mean the chat, I'll share on the chat.
Thank you so much. And I think these positive effects and these very positive notes are a good point to come to a closure to this very amazing webinar. We had like so many participants from all over the world. Thank you so much. Thank you to Jenny, Carol, and Elisa for their very, very interesting inputs and for their for sharing their passion and their expertise. Now it's my turn to say goodbye, but I am very interested to hear what you participants think of our webinar today. So your feedback is very, very important to us. I've posted the link to our feedback form in this in the chat box, so please let us know what you think and how we can improve. You will also find it in the PowerPoint presentation, which we are going to be sharing with you afterwards. Then also would like to invite you to our next webinar organized by Bridge 47 on evidence of the change you're making through your work, in particular through global citizenship education. So our colleague Hannah from Civicus will share a tool and very concrete tricks of collecting evidence of the change you're making and why it is so important that you show what you're doing and how it builds recognition. And a very concrete example will be coming from an organization from Madagascar. It's also a youth-led organization that looks into sexual health and leadership education, and why is it for also these organizations so important to collect evidence. Yes, and finally, I am happy to ask you to join our story and join also our Bridge 47 network. So as you can see, I'm including some links and some social media channels where we would be happy to keep in touch with all of you. And join us on Facebook, Twitter, we have a newsletter. And finally, a very, very big thank you to Jenny, Carol, and Elisa. It was such a pleasure to organize this amazing webinar with you. And yeah, thanks to everybody and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Bye. Bye.